Inside Outer Limits is a regular feature on the Paranormal UK radio network. Today's Inside Outer Limits radio show is a rebroadcasting of an older show which we completed with Spyros Melaris, the man who faked the Alien Autopsy footage. We were going to be discussing with him the publication of his upcoming new book, which is due out October or November this year, about how he faked that Alien Autopsy. So what we are doing, we're repeating this show, which we recorded round about 18 months ago, just to give you a little bit more information before we actually record and then broadcast the original intended show, which will be about 2 weeks away. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope you enjoy this rebroadcast. Hello everybody, and welcome to another podcast from myself, Chris Evers, of Inside Outer Limits, and Philip Mantle, my co-host. Hi Phil, how are you?
Good evening, Chris. I'm fine, thank you.
Good, I'm very glad to hear that. So, who have we got today, Phil?
Well, today's guest is someone I've been communicating with for a number of years now, and it is Spyros Melaris. We thought it would be rather apt to have Spyros as our guest this evening, after his appearance recently on BBC TV's The One Show. And, of course, people will probably be aware that Spyros is the man who led the team that faked the Alien Autopsy. And, of course,
yes.
that's what he was talking about on the BBC. So he's with us tonight.
That's brilliant. Fantastic. Spyros, are you there? How are you?
Oh, good evening.
Good evening to you, sir. How are you?
Yes, I'm very, very, very well, thank you. A little bit cold, all good.
Bit cold. You're down south, aren't you? You're in London. You're not a proper northerner like me and Phil. So, Spyros, what I want to do straight away is I want to know the answer to the magic trick you was doing on TV the other day. What was that about?
Okay. Well, it wasn't a magic trick. I did say specifically several times that it was an experiment.
Exactly.
And I said to Samantha, you know, there's nothing to find here. It's not a puzzle. There isn't a method for you to decipher. It's going to be what it will be. And genuinely, I took along a piece of a bit of rock that I found in Roswell, and I played it up a little bit. You know, it's all show business. But the fact is, it is a piece of stone that I picked up from the supposed crash site in Roswell, from just on the edge of Mac Brazel's ranch. And it was unusual. It was very, very unusual. It's got a very unusual feel to it. It's got metal particles in it. You know, when you look at it closely, it sparkles. And when you hold it, there's a feeling you get from it. And I can't really describe it. I'm the world's biggest cynic, by the way. So if you said to me, I've got this stone from a UFO crash site and it's special, I would be the one telling you that you're mad. Okay? So take that for what it is. So I thought it'd be a nice talking point, you know, it'd be a nice little talking point. And just to see, now I did that effect in the studio twice in rehearsals, and both times it worked. And sod's law, live on TV, it didn't work. But to be fair, we did have a lot of pressure. The director was hassling us, hurry up, we haven't got time, hurry up. So she was forced into making a quick decision rather than doing what I was asking her to do. Yeah. So it is what it is. Listen, it's not the end of the world.
Thank God, it's not the end of the world at all.
Yeah, I wasn't there to do magic. I was there to talk about the Alien Autopsy. I think we did that well. I mean, the phone hasn't stopped ringing. I've had a lot of offers all over the place for different things, and So it was worthwhile. And if you said to me, "Do you want to do it again? Would you do it again?" And it would have to be exactly the same. I would do it again, exactly the same.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's go back in time. How did you get involved with the Alien Autopsy?
Okay.
How long have we got? Hang on a minute. How long have we got? We've got
very
an hour and a half.
I'm going to try and keep my answers short. And if you want to embellish anything, we'll go further into things. Long story short, I was going to Cannes with a film crew. I was doing quite a lot of stuff in Cannes. For those people listening who don't know what happens in Cannes, 4 times a year, there is a different market for various aspects of show business. So there's MIDEM, which is a music fair, if you like. There's MIPCOM, which is more technology-based, so computer games, that sort of thing. And there's MIP-TV, which is television-based, just purely television. And then you've got the Cannes Film Festival, which is film.
I think that's the one that most people know, really,
yeah.
isn't it? Yeah.
But in the business, if you're in the business of selling TV shows, for example, that's where you go. And if you're in the business of buying TV shows, that's where you go. So people meet up, they do business. Okay, so you go out there quite a lot and deal with various companies. And it occurred to me at the time that I was taking a crew out to Cannes to do 2 bits of filming, one for Warner Brothers and one for EMI. And I thought, well, while I'm out there, let's see if anybody wants to hire us. Because, to get a crew out there is an expensive thing. If they're already there, that's already taken a big lump of the cost off for somebody. So in those days, we had fax machines. So I opened the catalogue of the people that are going to be at the MIDEM fair, and I just sent 4 faxes out to various people to say, look, we're going to be in town. Do you need us for anything? And while I was looking at who's going to be there, I noticed a company called Merlin, which was Ray Santilli's company. And the reason it attracted me was because it was local to me. And I thought, well, I don't know who these people are. If nothing else, even if they don't need me, there might be some business down the line that we can do. So it'd be nice to meet them. So I sent the fax. And I got a call back from Santilli, and he basically said, I don't need any filming, but it would be nice if we met. You're only around the corner from us, and we're doing stuff all the time. So that's how I met Santilli. And when I met him in France, he told me that he had an Alien Autopsy film, and he wanted me to look at it and to possibly make documentaries from it.
What year was this, Spyros?
This was in early 1995. If I recall correctly, it was January.
Right.
And when I was talking to Santilli for quite a long time before he volunteered that he had an Alien Autopsy film. When he told me that, my shoulders dropped, and I just thought, oh no, I've just wasted a whole evening with this guy. And he just dropped that bombshell, and I thought, okay, I'll go with it. You never know. I don't know what it's going to be. So he suggested we meet up when we go back to London. We'll meet up at some point, and he'll show me the film. So I went along, and he showed me that what we know now as a tent footage. And I just looked at it, and I knew it wasn't real from the get-go, because it showed signs of glitches, which were it's what synonymous with videotape, but the particular glitches I saw, the sort of thing at the time when we had this meeting, JVC had released a VHS camera. It took a full-size VHS tape, and it was like a camcorder, and it had this issue where it created a glitch every time you started and stopped filming. Not very noticeable, but if you know what you're looking for, it's there. So, and I noticed that. As it happens, I was actually wrong at that time, because I assumed it was shot on VHS. I now know it was shot on low-band U-matic, which is, again, another low-band, another format, which suffered the same glitches. But in any event, though, I knew it was shot on video. So I told him that it wasn't real. And then the rest is history. I said I could make it properly, and that's what happened.
Well, before we go into the sort of details, Spyros,
yeah,
of who, what, why, where, and when, there'll be those out there that don't know anything about your background.
Okay.
I mean, who is Spyros Melaris? And how did you get from your beginnings to meeting Santilli? What happened in between?
Okay. My background from school, since I was 6 years old, I had two hobbies. And the first hobby was filmmaking, and the second was magic. And I did them in equal proportions. And when I started to shoot films, I was using a little cine camera. When I started making films, I was using bits of magic that I knew within the filmmaking. So those two things were a mainstay of my life and still are. My father was a motor mechanic, and I used to go to his workshop on the weekends whenever I could to help him. So I became familiar with motor cars and engineering. So I have that background also. Mm-hmm. I actually qualified as a motor vehicle mechanic as well. My mum, I'm telling you this because it's all pertinent to the Alien Autopsy. My mum, at the same time, had a dressmaking factory, and in school holidays, I would go to her factory and help wherever I could there. And I generally ended up in the cutting room. And what that means is I used to help the cutter lay out patterns on multiple layers of material, and then he would then lay out the patterns to work out which is the best position for each piece to get the most out of a roll of cloth. Okay, so because I was there helping him, I learned an awful lot about that too, and that came in handy later. So I have that background as well. When I was 21, I decided that I didn't want to be in the motor industry, and I wanted to be in film and television. So I worked for the BBC as an apprentice, and soon realised that the protocol in the BBC at the time was I don't know how to say this tactfully, but I wasn't a public school boy, and because of that, I spent a lot of the time making teas and coffees whilst other lads that joined the BBC at the same time as me were actually working on the studio floor. And I decided, well, I'm not going to get anywhere here fast. So I went on my own, and I became a freelance videographer. And I was making music videos initially for small bands, eventually for very major artists, for big companies. So that's my background. I did a bit of TV. In about 1980, I think it might have been 85 or 86, I met John Humphrey's wife, Isabel, who was kitting out a restaurant that I bought a restaurant and sold it to this guy, and I took a year off at that point, and I got into stained glass windows. I was making stained glass windows for a hobby, and Steve Hudson, the guy that bought the shop, said to me, "Could you make me a stained glass window of Lily Langtry?" Because the building was apparently Lily Langtry frequented the building.
Now, so those who don't know, Lily Langtry, wasn't she the mistress of it? Was it King Edward VII, if I remember correctly?
Right. Oh, well done. I'm very impressed. Yes, she was. And so I did that, and I met Isabel, who was making the curtains for the restaurant and the upholstery and stuff. And I needed a face painted onto the stained glass window, and in a specific way. And she said, "My husband could do that for you." He's an artist. And that's how I met John Humphreys. We became best friends immediately.
Yeah,
and,
we'll explain who Humphreys is later on, but carry on.
Okay. So all of these little bits of things that happened in my life served me well when we made the Alien Autopsy, because it wasn't just about making a movie. It was about making a piece of magic. It was about making the props, and some of the props. I bought a lot of the props, but making some of the props, making the table, for example, the autopsy table. Well, my background in panel beating of cars came in very useful.
Right, we'll just hold it there for 1 second, because I think we've got a grasp of your multi-talents, from dressmaking to car mechanics, film, photography, magic, that all roll into one. For those that are not aware, what you refer to as the tent footage wasn't made by you.
No.
It was made by a chap called Keith Bateman. Now, Keith, again, didn't work directly for Santilli. You used to work with him. I think Keith used to make a lot of karaoke videos and that kind of keep fit videos, that kind of thing. And from what I've learned, it was one of Keith's employees. They called it a brainstorming session, Spyros, but basically they'd sit about having a laugh and come up with ideas of what they could do next. And this chap is called Philip Jarman, was reading a book about Roswell, and he said, wouldn't it be great to have some Roswell footage? Now, I met Keith Bateman, and he's got a terrific, wicked sense of humour, which, with the greatest respect, I think you have as well.
Well, we need one, don't we? Yeah.
Well, Keith took that idea and ran with it. And he filmed what is now the tent footage on a farm in Bedfordshire.
Yeah.
And the alien's head that you can see on it is a polystyrene head. He put some orange peel over for the eyes and so on. And it was that piece of tent footage that Santilli showed to you and others, myself included, in early 1995.
Yeah.
And Santilli had basically said to Keith Bateman, on your bike, this isn't good enough. Come back with a figure of how much it would cost to make a real one, something that's much more appealing. And Keith, being the kind of lad he was, he actually went and got a quote, and it was pretty much near what was used. But then Keith took as he would normally do, he put his own 3 penneth on top of that, which put the project out of Santilli's reach as far as finance was concerned. But nonetheless, Santilli, being the man he is, kept the tent footage. Said, see you later, Mr. Bateman. But the idea, was sown, and that's where it began. And then, lo and behold, you meet him in France. And for those who've got a memory, Santilli's office was on Balcombe Street in London.
Yes.
And Balcombe Street is famous for the Iranian embassy siege, of course, when the SAS stormed it and blew it to bits and shot all the terrorists pretty much. So here we are, Spyros. You've seen the tent footage. You thought, well, this is not brilliant. It's on video film. So how did we get from a piece of video film that was made in a barn in Bedfordshire by Keith Bateman to you and your friends becoming involved in making what we now know as the Alien Autopsy film? How did it all unravel?
Look, before I answer that question, let me confirm something as well, because I've been in the scenario, this brainstorming session you described?
Yeah, absolutely,
I have been in that environment with Santilli a number of times. Because I've worked with him quite a lot. After the Alien Autopsy, I did a lot of stuff with him, and often Ray Santilli thinks he has lots of good ideas, right? What in actual fact he has is a number of stupid ideas which have mileage. Okay.
I nearly laughed then. I was taking a drink when you said that.
Yeah, but it's true. It's true. it starts off with, he'll call up and he'll say, Spears, like, this is exactly the way he does it. Spears, what a great idea, right? And I know it's going to be stupid, okay? But what it does, though, it sparks a germ of an idea, and then he relies on other people to then pad it out. Yeah. Okay. And, oh, you know what? It won't work that way, but this will work, and then you find a different route, and it's the original idea gets diluted to death, but you end up with something quite valuable. Okay. So I've been in that environment. He has an enthusiasm. He's a very charming man, Ray. You know, he has an enthusiasm, and it spurs other people on, and that's a great trait that he has. But the bottom line is pound note signs. You know, that's all he sees: dollar signs and pound note signs. How can we make this into money? But he uses artists to create so that he can then monetize it. So that idea, that whole thing where you said, well, they were brainstorming, well, that would have, I believe, I wasn't there, but I believe Santilli would have planted the germ of, wouldn't it be good if we had an alien autopsy? And then somebody else, you know, stories change as they go. But his role, Santilli's role, is usually to say something ridiculous. That's a ridiculous suggestion. Let's make an alien autopsy. It's actually a ridiculous suggestion, right? Until you meet an idiot like me who then says, you know what, we could do that. And I get excited because of the challenge, right? But the idea actually is stupid.
Well, I think you're 100% right, because what Keith Bateman told me when I met him is exactly that. And they were pretty much the same, Spyros.
Yes.
They would come up with the most crazy ideas, and it would go from there. For example, Keith had this is just to give you people out there listening an idea of how these people worked. This was an era when a lot of the Keep Fit videos were on the go, and there was a big market for them. So Keith, in his infinite wisdom, had this idea of doing a naked Keep Fit video.
Oh, dear me.
So we literally, he hired 3 people from the adult film business, shall we say, 2 women and a man, and had them doing Keep Fit in the nude. There was nothing else. They would just Keep Fit in the nude. He thought this was a great idea. So he showed it to someone. He spent X amount of pounds on it. And he showed it to somebody who was actually a Keep Fit instructor. And they said, well, you can't release it because the various moves they're doing are not correct. People will hurt themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Keith had blown his budget, but he got an interview arranged with, I think it was the News of the World at the time, and he came up with this story. He says, he told the News of the World, I was in France, and I phoned my producer and told him to make a new Keep Fit video. And he misheard me on the telephone and thought I said a nude Keep Fit video. So this went out in the News of the World, and sales of the video went through the roof. You know, Keith got his money back and what have you. And he also told me about some of the pranks that were play on each other and so on. So it just gives you a taste and a flavour of the way these people worked and the atmosphere at the time when you meet them. Of course, there are those that think that you can find all this on the internet, Spyros, but you can't.
No,
you know that as well as I do. So, okay, we've reached a position now. You've seen the footage. Santilli's spun you his story. You can tell the story if you like, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, so once I saw the tent footage, see, I don't believe for a heartbeat that those guys made it for real, because they didn't try to cover their tracks. I think they did it as a bit of fun. I don't think for a second they thought that it was going to fool anybody, but it was a bit of fun. It was a little bit of a, Santilli, on the other hand, saw it and thought, you know what? I wonder if we can put this out and see what happens, right? Because he's looking for pound notes. So, and the reason I say I don't believe they made it as a real thing, because they didn't actually give it much thought, They didn't spend any money on it, really. None of it made any sense. And it kind of, it would be pulled apart in a heartbeat by anyone that knows anything about anything. You know, you don't have to be an expert. Anyone. So, because you're already, when you're making an alien autopsy, you're already on a hiding to nowhere. You know, you're making something that no one's going to believe. You're starting off on a very, very negative plane. So the only time they're going to believe it is when there's stuff in it which can't be explained.
Yeah, you know, let's take it from there. You've got all that behind you. You've seen the tent footage. You know, because of your experience as a filmmaker, it's shot on video, not 35mm, not 16mm film, but video. What happened next? Where did we go from there?
I left Ray's office quite disappointed because clearly he was either lying to me, he was mad, or
perhaps both.
Yeah, or somebody had sold him this and he believed it. Okay, that's possible too, right? So I kind of thought either way, this guy's not really the caliber of businessman I can be involved with, because it's too much, it's too wishy-washy. None of it made any sense. I got in the car and I was driving home, and I called John Humphreys, who is the gentleman I mentioned earlier, who is a sculptor, who worked and was a partner in a company called Coast to Coast Productions, and Coast to Coast Productions made special effects for TV and movies. Okay, John's primary role in that company was to sculpt anything that was needed so that the effects guys could then create a ghost or a monster, or have somebody have their arm chopped off, or in a movie or whatever. So, but he would have to sculpt the arm. Are you with me?
Yeah.
So that was his primary role. I was very close to John, had a lot in common with him, and I would speak to him about lots of things, and I called him up and I said, John, I've just seen the worst film you've ever seen in your life. We could have made it with our feet. So, and he said, why don't we? And that's what started it. I thought, well, he's right. Why don't we? So I immediately phoned Ray back, and I said, Ray, I've been thinking about this. I can make it properly, all right, so that it will stand up to scrutiny. But the only reason we would make it is to have a ta-da moment where we can go, ta-da, this is how we did it, okay? And we would have we would monetize it by making a documentary about how it was made, and then sell that around the world. So he said, that's great. Well, what would it cost? I said, well, let me price it up. Let me see what we it's not, when you scratch the surface, it starts getting deeper and deeper. It's not just make an alien. There's a lot more to this. So let me just see what we can do. So I went away and priced it up. And I went back to Santilli and I said, look, I can do it for this much. That's not including my costs. It's not including a lot of costs, because I'm going to just pull favors here and there. I'm going to do stuff just to make this happen. So we'll do it together as a partnership. And then when the money comes in, then we'll just split it equally. So that's how it was originally positioned. And that's how I was in a situation where I was making an alien autopsy. Did I miss anything? That's probably.
Yeah. So you put this proposal to Santilli. You've costed it. You give him a budget. So what happened next? How did it come to be, so to speak?
Well, I was at the time. I was also going out with a lady who I've now realised is probably the best researcher ever, anywhere. If you want to make a program, you need a researcher, this is the person you've got to book, because she's amazing. She's amazing. She's just, I don't know how she does it. She has a way of getting to the bottom of stuff, getting information, she's almost a private investigator. That's how good she is. She's just really, and we were talking about how difficult it would be to do something. I didn't tell her what it was about, but I was talking in general about how difficult it would be to go back in time at a military level, and get information that isn't in the public domain.
Now, just before you carry on there,
Yeah.
this is back in the days pre-internet. This is the internet came along really the late 90s, so this is pre-internet days. So I can understand this would be very, very hard to do the digging that would be required.
Yeah, and exactly right. And she said, well, it depends on what sort of thing it is, and maybe I can help you. And I said, well, it'll be mostly medical, but we're talking, 50 years ago. And she said, yeah, I can help with that. She said, just let me know what you need. So I went back to John and I said, John, look, we need someone to tell us how to do stuff, how it's got to look, how it's got to feel. We need someone, and she's there, and she doesn't know anything. But what do you think? And he said, well, she's great. I trust her. Let's bring her into the fold. So we went back, had a meeting, the three of us, and I said, look, this is what I'm going to try and achieve. What I need from you is I need you to teach John how to do an autopsy, but not today. An autopsy as done in 1947.
To all your girlfriends.
Yeah. You know what? It's one of my chat-up lines. It's had a little bit of success. It's only worked once. But we had that relationship where it was all about learning with her. She was a scholar, She looked for stuff. She knows stuff that we wouldn't even know that existed. I mean, seriously, I'm bringing you two into this conversation because I don't know very much about you guys, but I would wager that she knows stuff that you've never heard of. And I've seen it a million times. She's just
well, we won't go there. We'll concentrate on the Alien Autopsy. Yeah.
So she proved to me that she could do that. Without saying too much, she did have a pass as part of her job, which allowed her into various government buildings. And one of the buildings that she had access to was a medical library in Marylebone, and it's still there. And she went there to research how an autopsy is done, what gives away an American autopsy versus a UK autopsy at the same period, the toolkits needed, the methodology, all that stuff that goes on, what would be in the room, and every autopsy has a different purpose. Something you realise only after you start thinking about it. It's not just the cause of death. It's also sometimes they look at what has happened to the body because of the death. If you die from a radioactive overdose, if you got shot, so they look at not only why you died and what was the cause of death, but also how could we repair this damage if we saw it in a human being tomorrow in order to save them. So there's lots of reasons why an autopsy is done. It's not just determine the cause of death. And I found that very interesting because if it's an alien, you're not worried about how it died as much as you're worried about how this thing operates. How does it work? It's not us. It's something else.
Yeah, it'll have a completely different metabolism and everything, yeah.
Absolutely. So you're learning. It's day one at school. You're learning all about this new body that we've never seen before. So the cause of death element is irrelevant. Okay, and autopsies most of the time are to determine time of death, cause of death, various circumstances as to who might have done it. Okay, so any traces of somebody else's DNA, whatever. So she was really good at isolating the core issues. What do we actually want to do here? This is more a dissection than an autopsy. Okay, but if it's a dissection, Ray had already coined the phrase alien autopsy because he got it from something that happened in Roswell. Somebody mentioned an alien autopsy, and he grabbed that, and went with it. So we didn't call it a dissection, but in reality, that's what it was. It was an alien dissection. So, I've got this core team together. So that was my ex-girlfriend, John, and myself. Each of us have our own expertises, and without any one of us, it would have been a much more difficult proposition, and in fact, it may never have happened. Because when I laugh, Phil, we see these imitation Alien Autopsy films pop up.
Oh, there's dozens of them.
Yeah, there's every week we see a new one. And you see these companies, these TV companies, which have a whole program dedicated to, we're going to replicate the Alien Autopsy, and they miss a major part of the Alien Autopsy, which is not the alien being cut open, but the entire film. If they just did what they did on these recreation programs, it would be discovered as a fake within a heartbeat. It'd be over in a day or two, because they're not doing the entire gig. They're not fulfilling the entire requirement, and it is overlooked. It is overlooked by a lot of people. If you take away the room that it's in and the things that are in that room, a lot of the credibility goes out the window. And forget the alien. Get rid of the alien. Just look at the room itself.
Well, okay. So you've got your team. You've all got your various expertise. So where do we go from there? How do you set about making an alien autopsy? You've got your team around you. Where do we go from there?
We need a place to make the alien. So I left that with John, and I explained to John that because the forerunning of making the alien is a lot of work that doesn't look like an alien. Okay, if that makes sense. So you can quite happily start to do all the steps leading up to making the alien in front of people, because they haven't got a clue what you're doing. All right. For example, he molded his 10-year-old son as the basis of the body. Okay. Well, up to that point, nobody knows he's an alien. So you quite happily mold Michael in a studio with other people working there, because up until that point, there's nothing to see. You with me? The secrecy is not necessary. So he started off at a special effects workshop, which is called Murphy's, and he had a space in Murphy's workshop, and that's where he did all the preliminary work to get it up to a point where it's going to start to be an alien. Okay. He then transferred. He did the last bits in secret, and then he created the mold, and we then took the mold from Murphy's to the house that we were going to film in. And because the next step would be producing an alien, you see, the next thing that comes out will be an alien. So
you don't really want to be walking that through the streets to take it to the place where you're going to be doing the filming. So I can understand you taking that in private, in secret to the venue.
And we don't want anybody to see an alien coming out of the mold.
Yeah.
Before we even move it from the place, because there are other people working in the workshop. So it was the right thing to do, to move everything to the house and then do it all in secrecy, complete secrecy. So that was the first thing was where are we going to make this alien? The next thing was, where are we going to film it? Now, as it happens, my girlfriend's house was being redeveloped. So she was living in part of the house. Her mother had her own little bungalow apartment in the back garden. It was a separate building, and she lived in that. And most of the house was floorboards and waiting to be developed. So we, you know what, Phil? For a long time, I believed it was the middle floor. From my recollection, it was the middle floor of the house that we did this in. Right. And I thought that was the case for a long time. And then I recently went back to the house, and it wasn't the middle floor at all. It was the top floor. And I actually had to fight myself to remember, how did I think it was the middle floor? And it was, but it's a long time ago, obviously. But it was the top floor. So, anyways, I revisited. It's all been done up now, but we agreed that we would film in her house. So there was a little room downstairs which opened up to the patio on the garden. So it was very easy for John to work and make the mould and to make the creature, etc. So I set about to make the set in what were 2 rooms. There were 2 rooms in the top floor, but the wall that divided the 2 rooms had been removed, so it became one big room. And I set up to make the Alien Autopsy room on the one side, and on the other side, which was the second room, if you like, I created a tent to make the debris footage in there. Now, Santilli didn't ask me to make debris footage. Don't know if you know that, Phil. Do you know
that? Yes.
Okay. Yeah, he never asked me to do that. It was just something I fancied doing. So while we were doing it, I just went for it and did that too. So that's how it came about. So we found a place to make the alien, and I found a place to film it, and the rest of it was just piecing it all together.
So, just going back slightly, the actual alien and the autopsy on it itself, I do know that many noted forensic pathologists did actually consider the autopsy procedure in the film to be authentic, but they didn't. They actually stopped short of saying yes, it is an alien.
Yes,
that's right. So, what happened next?
Yeah, the reason that the people that should know better didn't is because you cannot deal with a logical mind if you present it with lots of logical reasons. Because for it to go against the logic, it ceases to be a logical mind. So I'll explain that. If I prove to you that this is a film made in 1947, in a logical process, as somebody who's not an expert in film, your sense of fair play allows you to trust the other experts, okay? Mm-hmm. So their witness statement is valid because they're experts in that field. So if a Kodak tell you this is a 1947 film, then you have to just say, okay, well, they know what they're talking about. They have no axe to grind. Why would they say it isn't, or it is if it isn't? So we live with that piece of information. And from that one piece of information, everything else falls in place. Because the medical personnel will say, this is not a human being. It must be a special effect. The special effects people will say, well, we could make this today, but we couldn't make it in 1947. So we don't think it's a special effect if this is a 1947 thing. So if it's not a special effect and it's not a human being, then what is it? And you're dealing with scholars. You're dealing with people who are trained to think, people are trained to chew the fat and come to conclusions based on logic, based on evidence. And if the evidence shows that it's a 1947 film, then they have to say, I don't know what this is. Mm-hmm. Because they're not going to say it's an alien. So if they say, I don't know what this is, then again, the logical common sense next step would be, well, if it's not an animal and it's not a human being, it's something we've never seen before. And if we tie that into Roswell, which is what we try to do, then bugger me, it looks like an alien. Mm-hmm. You see? And although I don't want to say it's an alien because my credibility is going to be shot, I've got to say I haven't got a clue what this is.
Which is basically saying it's an alien.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go on.
I was just going to ask, what was who was playing what part then? Who was doing the autopsy? Who was doing the filming?
Okay, we decided that John should be the main surgeon, and the reason for that was because John knew about anatomy. He's a sculptor. He's a Royal Academy lecturer now. I mean, he's a very, very qualified sculptor. and he knows where muscles go over bones. He studied it there. So that one thing gave him, a bit of an edge on us. So it wasn't a case of getting an actor. It was a case of, we've got somebody here who already understands how a body is built. So he's going to build the body. Who better to dissect it? So John became the chief pathologist cum surgeon. Originally, we did set out to make it a pathologist, and then we were told later that the person that had top clearance at the time would have been a surgeon. This is only from research and from bits of paper that we found, not that my girlfriend found. And she all the time kept stressing, I don't know how many of these documents I'm finding are genuine. I don't know if these are hoaxes in their own right. There was all sorts of paperwork, the Majestic 12 papers, and there was Project Blue Book, and there was all sorts of stuff that she unravelled and found that were either true or somebody had made them up. In any event, though, there were names involved in these papers, and then further research showed that these people were there. So Dr. Bronk was there. So, and he was a surgeon. So we figured, you know what? If anyone else who knows the situation, if there actually was a crash in Roswell of a UFO, and if there were alien bodies, only somebody with top clearance would be able to get near that.
For those who don't know, Dr. Detlev Bronk was indeed a surgeon in the military, and he was one of the so-called members of MJ-12. MJ-12 is a fiction. I'll call it fictional. Somebody will say I'm wrong. A fictional number of people, 12 people, who were put together to allegedly investigate the crash at Roswell. And Detlev Bronk was one of them. So you have indeed got a real man.
Yes. Now, I did say whether or not the MJ-12 paper is real or not. Obviously, she found it, and she pointed it out that it might not be real. And the reason she did that, as I told you, she's the best researcher in the world ever. I'm going to put my neck on the block. I've never met anyone like her. She found stuff in MJ-12 before anyone in the UFO community said this is not real because of this. Right, she's not in the UFO community, but she just looked at it, and she's got this mythology which she puts things in line, and then she disqualifies them as she finds other stuff, and she's got a very amazing way of doing stuff. And she found a lot of inconsistencies, and she said, "This doesn't make sense. I don't think it's real." Okay, but Bronk was very real. And because of Bronk, we had to film it again. We filmed it once, as if a pathologist was doing it. And that's what we now call the first autopsy, because we did two autopsies. One was not released. And we did it again straight after, because she discovered that it should be a surgeon doing the autopsy, not a pathologist. And the techniques that the surgeon would be using are very different. They're noticeable to someone who knows what they're looking at. So, because one's trained to save lives, the other one's trained doesn't care. This body's dead already. So the whole demeanour is different in the way they approach an autopsy. So we did it again as if a surgeon was doing it. And I'm going to be absolutely honest and tell you right now, I had no idea what the differences were. I couldn't see the difference. I didn't know, but they were differences. The first time I realised her value was when I heard Cyril Wecht say on the Fox programme, "These are surgeons." It's a surgeon.
Now let's just say who Cyril Wecht is. He's a forensic pathologist.
He is, he's done a gazillion autopsies all over the world. He's the guy they used to call in for big court cases, for murder cases, and what have you. Very, and he's a lecturer and teaches pathology. So, a very big name, very, very big name. But also, there was I've forgotten the name of the other pathologist, the Queen's pathologist. There was Dr. West, Ian West, but there was another one that I've forgotten, Milroy. And they both also commented on the fact that this is a surgeon.
Yeah, well, Milroy, in fact, put a written report together,
Yes.
and which was subsequently published. And I think he also went on television.
Yes.
So I think it's fair to say that, from a medical viewpoint, yes, the people were skeptical, but I don't think there was anyone that could point and say it's not a medical procedure because they got that wrong. And what they did confirm was that the way that the dissection was done was correct, but each surgeon would do things slightly different. There are a number of things which are standard, like the wide cut at the neck and so on. But after that, they would each do their own thing, so to speak.
But that's the same. That's the same in any occupation, isn't it, Phil? I mean,
absolutely.
I'm a photographer. I might set my camera settings different to Spyros if he's filming something, or to yourself. Everybody does that. It's just a natural thing to do.
It is. I'll give you some ideas, Spyros. I don't know if you're aware of this, but one of the biggest critics at the time he wasn't in the medical profession. He was actually an airline pilot, and was called Kent Jeffrey.
Oh,
yeah. He was one of the Roswell researchers. He flew in for the screening on May the 5th in London, come tearing out of the hall after seeing it, said, "We've got him. Because of your curly flecks on your telephone." Well, he soon had to eat humble pie. But what Kent Jeffrey did, and he went, he put this in writing, he believed that you had actually made, or Santilli or whoever, he didn't know you at the time, had made a snuff movie. That the creature on that film was flesh and blood. Wasn't an alien. He believed it was some kind of deformed human being.
Yes.
But nonetheless, it was a real, what I'm trying to get across, medical procedure carried out on something that was flesh and blood, and not, polystyrene and fake innards. That's how convinced he was.
Yes. I remember that. But then again, that was Santilli's line of presentation, and I don't know whether he got it from him, but what Santilli was very careful to do was to say, I don't know what this is. You tell me. Is it a human being that suffered radiation? Is it an experiment that's gone wrong? Is it a hybrid? What is it? I don't know what it is, right? But he would avoid saying alien because he wanted at any point to be able to say, well, I never told anyone it's an alien. They made their own minds up.
Yeah.
Well,
he said all that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the level of detail. And I say this again and again, when these guys recreate the Alien Autopsy for a TV show to say, look, we could have made this, it's doable, that isn't the question.
So when you talk about the level of detail, okay, you're filming these two autopsies. One you've got slightly wrong, so you do it again. Talk about some of the smaller details that are in the film that you purposely put in there. Give us an idea of what was going on.
Okay. John and I sat in a little coffee shop called Fabritz's on Finchley Road, and for hours, and we designed what this creature's going to look like, and we had to decide why it had whatever feature we decided to give it, because it had to make sense anatomically, but also logically. Okay, so first thing we did was we didn't give it a navel, we didn't give it a belly button. Very, very conscious decision. It wasn't it was written down as one of the things that we would do, and the reason for that was because we wanted to say this body is grown, it's not born. Mm-hmm. Okay, because we're talking future, we're talking sci-fi. But we need to keep our feet on the ground, though. What is possible? What is a reasonable assumption, okay? Because sometimes in sci-fi you go a little bit overboard, and it starts to look silly. If you put antennae on the head, it is the wrong direction. Does that make sense?
Absolutely,
No,
yes.
no.
Yeah.
It's perfectly fine,
Yeah.
Yeah, it just takes it to a place where, come on, this is too far-fetched now. But if you keep your feet on the ground and say, okay, we're going to make this look real, let's not go too far away from reality. Maybe it's us in the future, okay? So let's keep it looking more like us than Alien, but let's make sure it looks so different that it can't be us. So,
but actually, by doing that, Spyros, you've opened that up really, because there are people who have had encounters, and they actually say that they have seen hybrid babies growing in UFOs. So that actually opens it up to that side of the argument as well.
Yeah. I'd like to say one thing about that. I've heard so many accounts of people that have seen aliens, been confronted with aliens, have been on spaceships, and I've got to say, I don't know, I've never been there, but some of the stories are too far-fetched for me to believe as a cynic, okay? Mm-hmm. So I've got that in my head. I've got that filter in my head that says, how far can I push this before I stop believing it, okay? So this is actually a very important part of why this was successful, because we determined that we wouldn't do what the eyewitnesses said they saw, and that's a mistake if you consider it's making your life very difficult, because if you're going to go against what people said they saw, you're now creating a brand new belief system. You've got to now sell it, If somebody says, well, they've got 3 fingers and a thumb, and they've got big heads and black eyes, and they're very, very thin, and they've got a long neck, if you do what they say they saw, they're going to say, yeah, that's it, that's what we saw, and you don't have to sell it, okay? Mm-hmm. But we're not selling it to those people. We're selling it to the medical profession, and we're selling it to people who are back to that logical mindset, okay? We know how a body functions as a human being, but we can take some of that knowledge and say, okay, well, we know how a horse operates. A horse is nothing like a human being, but has similarities, lungs and a heart, and you can actually take all the similarities from a horse and a human being. But when you look at a horse's muscular structure, it's all there for a reason. You cannot have a head the size of the horse's head, with the skull and the brain hanging out away from the body without a very muscular neck. Mm-hmm. Just wouldn't work. Physically, it wouldn't work. So equally, if you take an alien and you've got this massive head and this spindly little neck, it wouldn't work. It doesn't make sense. Now, the only time that we can argue that point is, well, what do we know? We don't know anything about aliens. Why can't it be? Well, because somehow we've got to rationalise this. We've got to find a route to market, okay? Why is it right? So John and I decided, no, this would have a much stronger neck to hold a bigger head, because the head is not going to be full of foam. It's not going to be full of air. It's going to have a brain in it. It's going to have... Otherwise, there's no reason to have a big head, okay? So we're just thinking, again, going along logical tracks. Bigger head, heavier head, thin neck, that's it. It's a weakness. These are evolved beings. They're not backward. They're forward. So let's give it a stronger neck. And then we thought, okay, 3 fingers and a thumb, not good. That's not evolving to a higher being. It's going backwards. So we gave it 6 fingers rather than 5, and rather than 3. So it's better than us. Therefore, it's evolved.
And 6 toes as well, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. The reason that we did the 6 toes as well, because if you go along the line of, well, okay, these are evolved higher beings. I mean, we use keyboards every day, don't we? And if we fly an aeroplane, we're using our fingers to fly a plane, just to press buttons, to pull levers, to operate this, all the various elements. So to have an extra digit would mean we could be more effective and more efficient.
I mean, Spyros, in all honesty, I worked with a lad who had 6 toes on each foot.
Yeah, but not on each hand.
No, well, he wasn't a higher being, I can assure you,
No, but there's a very good point. What you just said there was a very good point, because I was just leading on to that. We know of human beings that have 6 fingers or 6 toes, either on one hand or on both hands, but never have we ever seen a human being, with 6 fingers and 6 toes on both hands and feet. So that level of perfection is, I think, where our evolution is going, okay? Because for us to have human beings that do grow an extra finger, we know that's called polydactyly. It's a medical condition.
Yeah, well, I mean, this will probably make you laugh as well.
Yeah.
I mean, last year my wife and I were at Chatsworth House in Derbyshire, big grand place, used in many movies and what have you. And I'm talking to one of the guides in it, and there's a particular portrait of one of the ladies that lived there, or Duchess or whoever. And I said, do you notice something odd about that picture? And he's giving me all the history about it. And she actually had 6 fingers on each hand.
Oh, wow.
And they didn't notice. They'd never seen it before. And I walked away smiling, Yeah. So sorry but there were other things that you built into the film as well, not just about the creature, but the environment in which you filmed it as well, was there not?
Yes. So to recap on the fingers and toes, okay, and we'll move on. That was important because the medical profession will say this is not unusual. We've seen this before. We haven't seen it on both hands and both feet, but it's not impossible that this might have happened at some point. Okay, so there's an element there of credibility that this is not far-fetched, but clearly it's nothing we've seen before. Okay, the black eyes, okay, were something that the big black almond eyes were something that we heard about again and again and again. This is a common feature in what an alien looks like. So we figured, okay, we know how lenses work, and to have a black eye, we don't know how that works. We can't imagine how that works. There's no iris, there's no pupil, there's no how is it working? Okay. So I said to John, rather than explain something that we don't know the answer to, why don't we just go back to what we do know? We know how an eye works, so why don't we create eyes that work like our eyes work? And the black covering is a covering. It's a lens. It's sunglasses. It's modern sunglasses. So the eyewitnesses are not disorientated too much. We haven't taken them out of the picture too much. We've gone against some of the things they said, but we want to give them some things to hold on to. Otherwise, all we're doing is alienating them, and we're making them look, either they're lying or they're looking silly, or they have to rebel against us and say, this is nonsense, because none of it fits. So we had to give them something. So we gave them the big head and we gave them the black eyes, but we wanted to have them questioning themselves. And the way you do that is you create the lenses and then you remove the lenses. So now they are sitting there going, oh, they're not big black eyes after all. We're just giving them an answer. Okay. Okay. So it's all about feeding everybody's ego. The person who says they saw an alien is either a liar or they're telling the truth. If they're telling the truth, we won't really know. And if they're lying, we won't really know. The only time we know is when we can actually see an alien for ourselves and we can compare. What's happened in the UFO community is all of a sudden, different people have seen different kinds of aliens. So now we've got a whole array of what an alien is, because there's so many of them that they could all be right. And then again, they could all be wrong. But who's going to prove you wrong? If an alien did appear tomorrow, why is that going to be going against anyone that said, I saw a grey, if it wasn't a grey, the popular grey? Well, they all exist. They all exist. There's lots of them. There's lots of different types of aliens. So we're all still in the game. You know, no one's going to get caught out here. Mm-hmm. So I'm not being cynical, by the way. I'm just telling you how I see it, okay? I'm not saying they don't exist, because I'd like to believe they do. I've never seen one. Personally, I've never seen one. So I'm just going along that route of if if somebody wanted to pretend they saw an alien, it's a free for all, isn't it? Oh yeah, yeah. They had 7 legs, 3 eyes, and they were purple, but they changed colour as well. They changed colour. They became green, and they could fly and levitate, and they could also reproduce just by clicking their fingers. You know, you can make it up as I go along. Right.
That's the classic B movie description, though, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, yeah. But prove me wrong. You know.
Yeah.
I've just told you what I saw. It doesn't have to be real. Doesn't have to be fake. It could be anything. So what we were doing is creating something. Here's the difference, okay? We're creating something that doesn't exist, but all of a sudden it's real. Our alien doesn't exist, but suddenly it's real. It's in front of you and it exists. So we've just created a monster. We've just created something which is now, it's got its own life. It's got its own, as we've seen. It's not going to go away. But this is the level of detail. It's fulfilling not only what's logical in a medical sense, or in a military sense, or in any other way, but it's also fulfilling everything that's logical in a ufologist's mind. Is this possible? Is this sensible? Have we seen this before? Have we heard about this before?
Well, I mean, there are, you know, some people out there who say, well, there's more to this story than meets the eye. I mean, you and I have talked long about this, Spyros. Some of what you've told me went into my book, but there's also other stories that, to me, are as equally as important about not just the detail of the creature and why you made it, where you made it, and who did what, but there were other things that happened during the making and filming of this Alien Autopsy. Am I right? And tell me if I'm not, but you'd made the first autopsy and realised you made errors. But then were the premises that you were on not burgled?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Right, we weren't burgled, we were broken into. There was nothing to take, you know, because it was what happened was we made the first autopsy, and we finished somewhere. It was about 1:30 in the morning, ish, maybe 2 in the morning, and we were very, very, very tired, and then we were told about the surgeon thing and the possibility of it not being, and are we going to do it again? And we were quite deflated because elements of it weren't right. And I said, look, guys, let's just go home, get some sleep, and we'll clean up tomorrow. We'll just clean, you know, we left the body all cut open and what have you on the table. And when you're working on something like this, you know, I've worked in special effects quite a lot, and so has John. When you're, for example, if you're creating a situation where you're going to cut someone's head off in a film, you don't see the gore. You don't see actually what the end viewer's going to see. What you see is a pretend head, you see pretend blood. It's not horrific at all. And that's what happened with us when we were filming this. We cut open this body, and we knew it wasn't a real body, and there was no horror in the room. When I left that room to switch the lights off to go downstairs, because what happened every night, we would switch the lights off and then go downstairs and then switch off the main electric in the house under the stairs. There's like a meter, and you switch it off at the mains, so the whole house is dead. Because nobody's living there. It was derelict. So we switched it off and left. When we came back the next day to clear up the mess, and we had to make a new body, you know, as soon as we came back, we found the door was off the hinges. It was actually kicked in. So we thought, oh no, you know, this is D-Day, because top secret, and all of a sudden someone's broken in. So we've gone in, and the lights were still off at the mains. So we envisaged they must have gone in with a flashlight, and they've gone into the various rooms and they're empty, and they've worked their way upstairs, and they've opened the door and they've swung the flashlight across, and they saw what I saw after we finished the autopsy filming, and I switched off the light in the room. Because what happened was I went up to the light and I stopped, and I turned around and looked back into the room, and I saw this dead body. And I actually jumped. I actually felt a chill down my spine because it looked so horrific. And I thought, oh wow, I've been working with this all day long and haven't felt like this. And now I'm looking at it. It's almost like a fly on the wall looking back. I saw the horror. And this poor person who broke in.
I'm just trying to. Yeah, can you imagine the burglar's face?
They've seen a dead body, right? And it was gory because there's a lot of blood, there was a lot of gore, and it was very realistic, even in real life, you know. And I had visions of them just fleeing and getting the hell out of there quick. But I then said to the guys, look, we can't clean it up now. Because if the police arrive, we need them to see that it's not a body, you know, and it's just a film, and it'll be game over because now somebody's seen the alien, you know, and it'll be dead in the water. But so we were very deflated by the whole thing, and we thought, okay, well, we'll have to wait. We'll have to wait and see if the police arrive. And by 4:00 in the afternoon, nobody arrived. So I thought it was safe to say that they didn't go and tell anybody, look, we broke into this house and we saw a dead body. Maybe they were worried about the fact they broke into the house. So they didn't want to incriminate themselves. And we thought, you know what, they haven't turned up yet, they're not going to turn up. So we cleaned up the mess, and we pushed another body out of the mould, and the following day we filmed it again. So yeah, that happened. And still, there's somebody out there walking around who may not even know about the Alien Autopsy.
Yeah. But they need to come forward.
Yeah, but maybe that person hasn't even put one on one together and thought this is the Alien Autopsy, because it could just have been a body. It was out of context. It wasn't. Yeah. You know, if you've got a flashlight and you're in a room, although it's a set, you wouldn't necessarily see that, because you've just put the light on this body, and got the hell out.
I mean, you're a burglar. You're already on edge, aren't you? Just in case.
Yeah.
On edge. Seeing that, I won't bother going down the stairs. I'd go up the roof.
I can't imagine what that person must have felt. Their poor little heart.
He must have got a few beers out of it down the year, so I wouldn't feel sorry for him. But so we got.
I've given it a lot of thought, and I thought, well, you know what? I don't even know if this person even realised that it's the Alien Autopsy, and even if they saw the Alien Autopsy, if they put one on one together, they'd have to see a documentary that says it was made in Camden for the penny to drop.
Yeah. He might have thought it was back in Rillington Place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, so you've made the two films. You've filmed the tent. You filmed the debris in the tent. It's all done. It's in the can. And you present this to Santilli. You know, what was his reaction once it's all made?
Well, there's a little step that we've missed. Let me just rewind a little bit, Phil, because it'll be interesting for you. We made the first autopsy, and I called Santilli and I said, "We've done it wrong. We need to do it again." And he immediately said, "I haven't got time. I haven't got any more money. That's it. Forget it. Let's just leave it." And the bit that's important in that whole sentence that he gave me wasn't the "I haven't got any more money." It was the "I haven't got any more time." And what that meant was, because I didn't know this, I know now, he was speaking to people like you and saying, "I've got this film."
He was already selling it, yeah.
Yeah, "I've got this film, and I'm going to present it to you. I'm going to show you it very soon." And people were going to his office in a particular meeting. There was our friend Mr. Baita, Maurizio, and also what's his name?
It was Colin Andrews, there's Maurizio Baiata from Italy, Colin Andrews, there's Reg Presley.
Reg Presley was there, yes, right.
And myself.
Yeah. So he couldn't put these people off. So he said to me, "Look, I must have, what's it look like? What's the film look like?" I said, "It looks fantastic, Ray, but it's wrong. It will be found to be fake very quickly. You can't show it to anybody." And he said, "What if I just show little bits?" out of context. I said, I'd rather you didn't. I'd rather you didn't show this to anybody, because it will be the reason why the whole thing falls down. If you show something. So he said, oh, well, okay then. And he didn't tell me he showed anybody. He told me he wouldn't show anybody.
Yeah, he showed me it all. I saw the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I did remark, and I didn't obviously know that what was going on at the time, that the first autopsy was much
darker.
But it was a lot. The one that's being released was the poorer quality of the two.
Well, because I aged it.
Yeah, so the one that I saw hadn't been aged. I didn't know that. The first one he showed us, and we only saw it that once, Spyros. Nobody else saw it again.
That's
and
right.
He gave.
I think what he did was he had a bit of an educated gamble, which was, I'm going to show it to these guys once. They won't be able to freeze frame and analyse it to death. They're going to be in awe of the situation and leave enthused, and I'm not giving them a copy. So they won't remember the finer details. Even if they knew about autopsy procedure, even if they knew about stuff, they wouldn't remember. They wouldn't know. They wouldn't have the expertise. And he was right in that respect. Because,
of course. I mean, all they would see. Sorry, Spyros.
Yes.
All they would see in this footage would be an alien. They wouldn't
right.
be interested in the finer details of, to put it bluntly, the cutting up of the alien.
Yeah, I mean, again, we saw it in Santini's office. We were unprepared. None of us, as you've rightly said, Spyros, were medically trained. Although Colin Andrews, I think his father-in-law was a pathologist or a surgeon, but he wasn't sat next to him,
Yeah.
So we'd one chance to take it all in, and it's not easy,
Well, let me tell you about something in the film, the first film, that might ring true for you, that nobody else knows about. This is brand new information, okay? Well, I'm not sure if I ever told you about this. I just explained to you about knowing where the line is. Where do you draw the line, which is unbelievably too far-fetched, and what's too bland and too human, and finding that balance where, this could be possible, this could be real as an alien. Okay, what we did was, because we were pushing the envelope and pushing the boundaries, we created a vagina on the alien, but no breasts.
That's correct.
And the reason we did that was, it was an old joke. It's an old joke that it's the old the sexist view. Most if you say, I went to see the doctor today, you assume it's a man. Because we have a built-in sexist filter that doesn't allow us to say, well, it could be a woman. Because we automatically assume it's a man. But there was a gag that went on at that time we were listening to. It basically was, if God didn't have a sense of humour, she wouldn't have made men, right? That was the joke, and the fact that we're twisting the common misconception or conception that God is a man and making him a woman. Okay, so with that little twist of the tale. So we thought, well, all these aliens we see, we assume they're men. When does anybody ever assume there's a female alien? Right? So we thought, okay, we'll do the same joke. We'll use that prejudice to make people think twice about it. Oh, hold on a minute, it's a woman, right? If it's a woman, hold on, but she hasn't got breasts. So what is this, right? It was a talking point. It was a diversion tactic to make you start thinking about something that wasn't in the film. Okay, it was about the romance of the being rather than what you're looking at. So in the first film, we did a piece in that film where we were removing things from the vagina.
Correct. Yeah, I saw that.
And in theory, it made perfect sense to us, because we thought, you know what, this is so edgy, it's going to make people upset. It's going to make people think, well, if this was a hoax, and why would they do that? Okay, why would they do that? This is beyond, We actually cut that whole sequence out in the second one because it was too pornographic. It was too wrong. It was the wrong side of the right thing to do. So Did you see all the stuff that went on there?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and I have commented on it, as did the others.
Yes.
But it was, we were unprepared for anything. We'd
Yes.
no idea what we were about to see.
But you understand what I mean by, as a viewer, when
Yeah.
you see that, it's uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable thing to sit and look at.
Yeah.
And you feel like you shouldn't be looking at it. And that feeling of I shouldn't be looking at this enforces the fact that this is a secret film and no one should be looking at it. Okay? So it's just messing with your emotions. I got it wrong. I've got to admit, I got it wrong doing that. That's why I didn't do it in the second autopsy, because I felt that by doing that, I was knocking a number of viewers on the head. I was limiting the commerciality of it.
Yeah.
And although it could be edited out later, it could be blurred, it gave it a different flavour, and it didn't sit well with my personality. It didn't sit well, so we took it out. It was too uncomfortable for us. But so there was an awful lot of stuff in the first one, which we didn't use. The brain in the first one was actually raspberry jelly, and it was too dark.
It was very dark.
Yeah, and you couldn't see any detail. What's the point of using real sheep's brains? We had two sheep's brains put together. What was the point of using real sheep brains? You can't see them, So the next one we used gelatin, which is more see-through, and you could actually see the little bits of a brain, So it was a good dry run.
So time is against us, believe it or not.
Yes.
So we're going to have to jump forward in time. And the film's been released. It's gone around the world. There's been countless reproductions of it. It's made its way into popular culture. The Simpsons, The X-Files, Seinfeld. You could get an Alien Autopsy cake. You name it, it's there. It's never going to go away. Then, of course, we had the Ant and Dec movie, which wasn't bad, but it was okay. So we reached today, Spyros. You'd just appeared on the One Show. I managed to get my ugly face in there for a couple of minutes with you as well. So the viewers.
Can I quote you on that, Phil?
You can indeed, mate. This is what one of the things that really annoys me about this is here's Spyros chatting a lady up saying, come on, look at what I want you to make an alien with me, right? And I tried things like that at school, and it never worked, man. Being interested in UFOs never got me a girlfriend, so I'm obviously using the wrong line. I should have said, come on, make an alien autopsy with me, but I'm too late for that now. But here we are, we're all these years later, when we think that the interest in this film has died and gone away. Hey presto, you're on BBC primetime television. I know that you've also been, I say working in a very loose way. You've been putting together your own book, on all this. There's far more detail than we've managed to go through in this hour and a half so far. Where are we now with your book? A lot of people have said, is this book ever going to happen? Is it coming out for Christmas? Is it next year? It's like it seems like, no, you ought to really have been a plumber as well at some point, because plumbers will say, I'll be round on Wednesday. They don't say which Wednesday. And same with your book. It'll be out soon, but you don't say when. So I'm going to put you on the spot here, Spyros. Come on.
In my defence, Your Honour, had I brought the book out, say, 10 years ago, it would be redundant today because of the way that people have commented and the commentary that's going on. There's two lines of thoughts, okay? One is, it's fake. Spyros told us it's fake. He's told us how he made it. We believe him. And there's the other school of thought, which is Spyros is being paid by the Men in Black to say that it's not real. And actually, there is a real film. Now,
that's true. I can vouch for that. I can vouch for that. That people have accused you of that. Yes.
Yes. So just by pure luck, okay, lots of things have happened in my life where for some reason I've had to put it on the back burner for another reason. It's just carried on. And it's all been for a good reason, because other things have surfaced, and which will make it the definitive book as opposed to a redundant book. Because
I thought you were going to say as opposed to your book, then, Philip.
No. Listen, your book. No, I would never do that. I've got good manners, and I love you as a person, and I would never say that to you. But your book is your book, and it cannot have anywhere near the insight, because you didn't live the problems, right? So, but here's the thing, right? I'm nearly there. I've got a lot more stuff that I wouldn't have had in the original book had I done it earlier, and I've got smoking gun information and evidence. So the people that are out there saying he's paid by the Men in Black and he's this and this that and it's actually real, well, all of a sudden they cannot say that anymore because of this book. Okay, so and I think that's important, and it's for me a good job I didn't do it earlier. The other thing is, on a commercial basis, I didn't do it deliberately, but I think the book has a much bigger audience today and a much bigger value because of the fact that it's not come out for all this time. And I was, at the beginning, I was afraid to release the book because I thought, I release it, it's going to cost me a few £1,000 and I'm not going to get that money back. What's it for? Is it vanity? Well, I've got no reason to put it out there, but people want to see it, people like yourself. I think, okay, well, I owe that to people, those are the people that want to see. So I would do it and I would take a hit. I would actually lose money. And as time has gone on, though, things have happened and publishing's become cheaper, and there's lots of ways of publishing a book, and it could become a more lucrative thing as well. So maybe I won't lose my money. So, you know, because we can sit here and talk about the Alien Autopsy, you know what? The majority of people walking around out there are not talking about it. It's not the first thing on their mind. They're not sitting there with bated breath waiting for my book. So the people that are waiting for the book are not very many people in the scheme of things, in the grand scheme of things. I've now got a bit more confidence because I've watched other UFO books being sold and the business they're doing, and that there's an international market and there's a different way of presenting it. And you've got your online presence, you've got all sorts of things that weren't around at the time. So I'm glad it hasn't happened yet. I don't regret it for a heartbeat, not for a second. I am pleased that it's cut to this point because the book now is a substantial book. It's worth more. And it also is appealing now to an audience that wasn't there. You know, I meet people walking around every day of the week who weren't even born. They were toddlers. You know, they haven't got a clue what the Alien Autopsy is. So for that reason alone, I'm glad it hasn't happened. To answer your question, I'm going to America very, very soon. I'm putting together a film deal, and I want to coincide that with the release of the book. So
when you say a film deal, are we talking feature film or documentary film?
We're talking, I'm doing two. I'm doing a feature film, which will be a black comedy, which will be the true story, unlike the Anton Deck film, which is bubblegum. It's a bubblegum movie. It was fun, factually incorrect. You know, there's lots of stuff that happened in the Anton Deck film that didn't actually happen in real life.
Yeah.
You know, so it is what it is. But I want to make a proper film with proper Hollywood stars, and I have that opportunity. So let's see how that pans out. The other thing is I've hooked
sorry,
up with,
Spyros, I was just going to say, in whichever way this goes, you know, please don't forget Outer Limits magazine. We're more than happy to support you in any way we can.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I won't forget you. My hopes for the film are with a specific director, and we've been in conversations, and it's gone hot and cold, and we're back on again. But I didn't tell you this, Phil, but a couple of weeks ago I was working on the Sophia Loren show in the West End, and a couple of investors that came to that show had dinner with me afterwards. One of them is in the film business and funded a number of very big movies, and he wants to do it. And he's very close to, well, actually best friends with another very big director. Not somebody I would have chosen, but I would bite their arms off. I'd go with it tomorrow morning if it came off, because it's a very good director. So there are two horses in the race now, which makes my life a lot easier when I go to the States and deal with the first choice. It puts me in a very good position. But that's a movie. I've also been offered a 6-part documentary series with a very big broadcaster in Canada for a worldwide market. I can't tell you who it is at the moment, but it's massive. And I was originally going to do a 1-hour special with them, and they decided that they didn't feel that there was any mileage in a 1 hour. And is there a series in this? And I wrote a new way of presenting it. And the idea is we're going to run a timeline for each character in the process. So there will be a timeline for me, a timeline for Philip Mantle, a timeline for Ray Santilli, a timeline for John Humphreys. And when I'm excited by, you know what I mean by a timeline, yes?
Yes.
So it will be January 1995 until to date. And what was everyone doing at exactly the same time? Okay, so whilst I was building a set, John was making an alien, Philip was waiting to see a film.
I was pestering the living daylights out of Santilli.
Yeah.
Running, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Meeting him in London, yeah.
Santilli was fielding all these people, hassling to see the film whilst we're making it. So you kind of cross in and out of timelines to see what everybody was doing at that moment in time. So very interestingly, our timelines cross. Okay, so in some sequences, 2 timelines are one. Because for example, I was in the same room with Philip Mantle filming a documentary with Santilli, and Philip Mantle had no idea.
The Men in Black told you to say that.
Yeah, but Philip, was it true? Philip,
absolutely.
Was I in your house? Was I filming you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I was filming you in your house. You had no idea who I was. You just thought I was a cameraman.
Yeah.
Right, but all the while, Santilli's timeline, your timeline, and my timeline actually crossed.
Yeah. And
became one timeline.
And I spent the next 14 years looking for you, and you were in my living room.
Yeah, that's right.
I've just got a question to ask. I've just got a question to ask you, Phil. Who would you get, Phil, to play you in this movie, in this documentary movie?
Pass.
Good question.
Oh, that's interesting. That is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, Spyros. Just carry on. Sorry.
That's okay. So they want a 6-part series because they can syndicate that easier around the world. They can sell it easier than a 1-hour special. So I've had to get my thinking cap on, and I've worked it out that we've got 6 parts running everybody's timeline, and that's a great way of introducing what everybody did. Because you kind of nip in and out of the timeline, and you can see them progressing and growing and how it all fitted together. So I'm doing that as well. And the story, the film versus the documentary, although it's the same story, it would have a very different emotional feel to it. Because obviously when you're making a movie, you have all sorts of other things going on, like love interests and protagonists, and you have your subplots. So in the movie, my relationship with my girlfriend at the time would also be a subplot, and my relationship with John would be a subplot. So where you wouldn't see that in the documentary, it's more about feely touchy and emotions on a movie. So you can actually sympathise with the characters because you're buying a story as opposed to a factual story, a factual account. So they'll be very different, and there's room for both of them. And I'm very, very pleased that I've been fortunate enough to have been offered it. I put the documentary off till after the one show was aired because I want to keep my options open and just see what else is out there. Because right now, I realise that this has got a shelf life. Because because it has a shelf life as long as there's two sides of the coin. One lot of people saying this is real, and another lot of people saying this is fake. It stays alive. If we all agreed it's fake, it dies a death. That's it. It finishes there. Mm-hmm. It just becomes a piece of history. So,
and of course, I was just going to say, of course, when those that were around in '95 who saw this, who witnessed this, I mean, I remember this coming out, and I mean, I looked at this footage myself, and the thing that I thought was of course the telephone lead on the wire on the telephone there on the wall. That to me didn't seem real, because I thought coiled telephone leads were not around at that time in '47. Now I understand now that, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, that those coil leads were used by the military back in '47 and not in public telephones in the home, etc.
Well, this
now,
is that's
those people that saw this come out, of course, will get older and will pass on, and this will all just go. Your shelf life will disappear, because people who saw this in '95 will no longer be around to discuss this.
Yeah. It will be there in the history books, but it won't be as prominent as it is now. I mean, the thing with the curly wire, I stumbled on that by mistake. What happened was, the phone that I bought was sent to me from America with a straight wire. It had a straight wire on it, and I was going to use it, and it would have been fine, But the girl that bought it for me in America, I'm actually trying to locate her, by the way, because she's out there somewhere. And she was working with a group called the Flying Karamazov group, and she was the PA for one of the guys. So I'm going to try and find her, because they'll know where she is, hopefully. And then that's another bit of the book that I can put that little element of it. She phoned me up and she said, I don't know if you're interested in this, but I've got an upgrade kit for the phone. And I said, what does that mean? What is it? And she said, well, it's got a Bakelite cap that goes on the mouthpiece. It's got a Bakelite shoulder brace that you put onto the handle so you can hold it hands-free on your shoulder, between your neck and your shoulder. And it's got a curly wire that makes it longer so you can walk away from the wall. I said, okay, how much is that? And she said, I think it was something like $18 at the time. And I thought, you know what, just send it anyway. Right. And then when we did the research, we found that the upgrade kit was available in 1945.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And most of the people that were using it didn't have a worry about the cost. So Mr. and Mrs. Smith in their home wouldn't necessarily buy it because it's an extra expense. But a government building would be fully spec'd. A government building, military building, all that sort of, hospitals, they would have the upgrade kit because it would have automatically be fitted. So I thought, this works perfectly. One lot are going to say they didn't have curly wire, it's a fuse. And then when you look, it actually is a reason why this is real, more real than it was before, because a military or hospital or some kind of government building would have had it, which then pinpoints it into a government building.
Yeah, I mean, as I pointed out, when Santilli showed the film Behind Closed Doors on May the 5th in 1995, Kent Jeffrey, the airline pilot, came screaming down the corridor, we've got him. And he was talking about the curly flex. He was absolutely 100% sure that they were not around in 1947. And it was a colleague of mine called Mike Wotton. He contacted a particular museum somewhere in the States, and they said, it was an upgrade. You just paid a little bit of extra money, and hey presto, and we got a photograph of it as well. So he didn't know what to say. So those that were saying, it's a fake, once that was proved to be incorrect, it made some of them think against Spyros. It really did.
Yeah, and also, I mean, the clock in the back of the wall, very, very silly thing. And I had an argument with John about this when I was doing it, because I was struggling to find 2-pin Bakelite electric sockets from America, from the late 40s. And John said, just stick the wire through the hole and plug it in behind the set and just forget it. Make your life easy. And I said, John, the clock has got a plug on it, okay? And that means it's designed to plug into a socket. So the wire hangs down and plugs into a socket. I didn't know that, and neither did you, but someone else knows that. So by putting it through the wall and making my life easy, it might be a reason why somebody says, yeah, the clock's correct, but it's fitted incorrectly. That wasn't supposed to be like that. It runs on electric. So where is the cable going? It can't be in the brick and in the plaster. Because if it's a real wall, that's what we're talking about. So I held out. We did get 3 Bakelite, proper Bakelite 2-pin, because they didn't have an earth socket. You with me in those days? Yeah. So I got 3, and I put one on the bench by the bench there to plug the phone in. I had another one by the side of the autopsy table that you see just a little bit as the camera flies by. And I figured if I just do that, I deliberately went past quite quickly. So somebody freeze frames, they will see that there's a redundant socket on the wall. Why would somebody go to the extent of sticking another one where they're not going to use it? Right? As it happens, you can barely see what it is. But if you know what it is, you know what it is, you know. So, so I went to extremes. And the reason I went to the extremes, I had 3. I bought 3. They sent me 3. If I had one, I would have used one. But I had 3. It was a shame not to use them. So I just put them in places that I just thought, you know what, if they see it, it's another little convincer. Yeah. But every little detail was important.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we've got about 10 or 12 minutes left. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing in the future, Spyros, please, if you don't mind.
Well, for a living, I'm working on a number of live shows, nothing to do with aliens or the UFO community. We bring AAA lister celebrities to the West End, London's West End, and we do a one night only special. So that's quite lucrative. It's a lot of fun. So I've been doing that, and I'll continue to do that.
And of course, your last guest was none other than screen goddess Sophia Loren.
Yeah, Sophia Loren was last couple of weeks ago.
I wish I'd known. I really do wish I'd known.
Yeah. Before her, we had Michael Douglas. And before Michael Douglas, we had Charlie Sheen and Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Pacino. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Yeah. So it's a fun gig, and I'm made for it. I'm very good. Very good at that gig because I've got little bits of expertise where they need to be, and I'm a people person, so it all works. It works for me. But I have been asked to do another program which is more in the realm of the Alien Autopsy. I won't give it too much away, but it's about creating more hoaxes. And I'm in two minds of whether or not I want to do it. I kind of feel that I will, only because there's a challenge involved. You know, am I able to do it again? Because the question they asked me was, do you think you could create a hoax as big as the Alien Autopsy in today's market? With the internet and with everybody's got a camera on their phone, and you know, could you create something in the public domain that's going to go as crazy globally as the Alien Autopsy did? And I immediately said, of course I can. And they said, well, do you want to do it? Do you fancy doing it? And now it's a case of, oh, you know what? It's a challenge and a half, and part of me thinks, do I really want to upset people again? Do I really want to become this person that's you know, after the one show, people are still calling me a con merchant and a fraudster and you know, because they don't understand that I didn't take the money. They don't understand I didn't sell the footage to anybody. Right? That
was Ray Santilli, just in case anybody wants to know.
Yeah, I didn't sell it to anybody. I made what I was hoping it would be the largest illusion of a magician perpetrated on the world. And it was a little bit of a psychological experiment as well. You know, I'm asking a very, very pertinent question to the world, which is, do aliens exist and are they visiting our planet? And the conclusion of that is, and how are you going to react when the answer is yes? So you know, that's me just doing it for myself. But being called a fraudster and a liar and a cheat and all of that, you know, it has its toll. It has an effect on you.
Yes.
I don't want to be that. And now I'm going into it again with the very purpose of fooling people again. Mm-hmm. The difference, of course, is that no one's going to buy this. Everything I create and do won't be sold. The money is from revealing how it was done. So I'm kind of think I might do it. I've invited John to join me, and I want to bring the team back together again, mm-hmm. and be the team behind this program. If John said yes, let's do it. I think I'd be inclined to do it. It keeps me current. It keeps me in the public eye. It keeps me busy. You'll be amazed that whenever I go into business meetings, if somebody says, "Oh, Spyros, he made the Alien Autopsy," that's how people introduce me, and it immediately gets everybody going. Oh, I remember that. Oh God. Yeah. Oh, you had me going when that came out. And I met a guy a few weeks ago who told me that as a teenager, he would have nightmares because the aliens are coming. And my film did that. And so there's a responsibility, and I kind of don't know where the line is.
Now, what I'm going to ask you now, because we've only got about 8 minutes left.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to ask you, going back to 1947.
Yes.
What do you think happened at Roswell?
Okay, that's a good question. I speak from this experience. Okay, I spoke to over 30 people in Roswell and interviewed them. And many of those people were there in 1947, or their family was, their parent was. And something crashed. No question about that at all. Something unusual crashed. That's also true. I don't know if it's a UFO, because a lot of conflicting evidence. But it was definitely something as fascinating as a UFO. It was something very unusual. It was something that was worthy of the notoriety that Roswell got. My personal opinion, and it's only my personal opinion because I'm able to emulate anything that you might want me to do. Okay? And because I've got that mindset, I've got to think of this as saying, oh, you know what?
I'm just going to interrupt you there, Spyros, because we had a really bad connection and I didn't get all the actual statement there that you made.
Okay.
Could you just repeat that, please?
Yes. I, as a magician and as a filmmaker, if you said to me, can you do this? Can you recreate this? I can recreate pretty much everything, right? So my mindset is that nothing's impossible. I can recreate it. It won't be real, but it will make you think it's real. Okay. So if I can do that, I've got a mindset which says everything has a logical explanation. So I believe something crashed in Roswell. I believe the people that tell me that something crashed that they've never seen before. I don't buy that it's a UFO. I don't buy that it's an alien spaceship. Only because of the conflicting evidence that I've heard. Nobody's got the same story. I haven't heard the same story. I mean, they kind of take a little bit from each other and they kind of mix it all together. And then all of a sudden you realize that one of them's lying because I've called them out. Okay, I'll explain that. Sergeant Clifford Stone, I interviewed. He actually broke down crying on camera. Very convincing. Okay, but he told me that he saw my alien in 1969. I know it wasn't there in 1969, but he didn't know that. Yeah. I then asked him, is it exactly the same or is it something similar? He said, no, identical. It was identical, right? So he's adamant that what I've made in 1995, he saw in 1969. So I can't now take anything he says as the truth. I've got to take it as a little bit of fiction, So when I meet lots of people like that, I met Frank Kaufman. You've heard of Frank Kaufman?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Frank Kaufman actually put a design of a triangular spaceship into the Copyright Office and doesn't know how it works. Okay. And he basically told me that he drew it, and from what he saw and he copyrighted it because he felt that he wanted to somehow be tied to it, and it might be lucrative for him. And when I wanted to interview him on camera, he wanted $2,000, and I said, "Well, there isn't that much money in the kitty, and I've interviewed so many people, and nobody's charged anywhere near that, if anything at all." So, I had to believe that he was in it for the money, and took everything he said with a pinch of salt.
Yeah.
A lot of wild goose chases. So to answer your question, just very quickly, I believe it was a military craft that no one's ever seen before that crashed. The US military, I believe, wanted to shush it up, not release it too soon, because they didn't want the Russians to see it. They didn't want anyone to know that they've had a new plane crash. We've seen lots of aeroplanes now which are triangular in shape, or could be alien in 1947 today. The Harrier Jump doesn't fit with anything, for example. So I believe it's a military craft that crashed, and the rest of it is all folklore. That's my.
Well, I mean that's an interesting point, because what you're talking about there, Spyros, is the perfect cover-up. If something military crashes, they call it a UFO, or in those days a flying disc, as it was described. Yes. And of course, everybody goes running off in the wrong direction, and the answer could have been right under their nose, but they couldn't see it. It's the perfect cover-up.
If you want to add something, add it in the open.
Well, and not only that, when you go back to the one show when you had that lump of rock or piece of rock, I've actually got a piece on my next to me here that I got from Roswell, running around in the desert, thanks to you, with all kinds of strange creatures there. But I mean, there is a gentleman called Nick Redfern. He's an expat, lives in the States, and he's of a similar opinion to you. He believes that whatever happened at Roswell was a mess made by the military. Let's face it, they've done that down the years. It's not uncommon, and that it was covered up. He's even speculated that the aliens, in inverted commas, were actually Japanese prisoners of war. And of course, it was against the human rights. They would never admit it, and so on. And Nick has written 2 books about this. But you're right. I mean, something definitely crashed in Roswell. Even the powers that be in the United States will admit that. They claim it was a balloon of some description or another. But the Alien Autopsy, whether you like it or not, Spyros, is intrinsically linked to Roswell. I mean, in fairness, I won't give him much credit, but Santilli, when I first talked to him about this, didn't call it Roswell. He called it Roswell.
Yes, because that's Ray. You know when you meet people that can't spell. One thing you see when you see a trait that you see is that they spell things the way they say them.
Yeah.
Okay, and often enough they don't get it right. Ray is not a great speller, and for example, Roswell is a little bit of his mannerism, and him not being able to turn his tongue to Roswell.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, I understand that. I mean, me, you'll not recognise by my accent that I'm from up north anyway, So yeah. I understand that. But listen, we're going to have to call it a day there, Spyros. We've just about run out of time.
Okay, well, it was fun.
Well, on behalf of myself and Chris and Inside Outer Limits, we know you're a busy man, and we know you have got all things up your sleeve, like most magicians do. But we would sincerely like to thank you for your time. We wish you every success with your planned movie, documentary, series, and I'll put this in inverted commas again, possible book. And when some of these come off, because I've no doubt they will, perhaps you'll be able to find the time to talk to us again, okay?
Absolutely. It will be a pleasure. It has been a pleasure. Thank you, guys.